TNA No Surrender 2012 pay-per-view. Reviewed the pay-per-view there a little while ago. As far as my thoughts on the show from TNA, I thought it was not a terrible show from TNA, but it definitely wasn't a spectacular show. It was just an average show at best, somewhat of a throwaway show, but there were things on here that I thought they did a good job building up to their next pay-per-view, which you knew going into this show, especially considering it's a month before Bound for Glory, you weren't going to get a spectacular blow-away show. You were going to get what we ended up getting, was just an average show, somewhat above average show with two good matches on here, but more or less, they don't want to have a huge blow-away great show before, Bound for Glory. So they did a good job building up to Bound for Glory. And at the same time, even though it was an average show from them, you did at least have a few good things that was worth at least seeing on here, which was, you saw a great tag team title match, with the champions, Christopher Daniels and Kazarian, taking on AJ Styles and Kurt Angle. Really good match. Obviously, whenever you pair those teams against each other, you're really never going to be disappointed. You're always going to get a really good match when you have those two teams paired up against each other. And you saw a really good opener on here with Jeff Hardy and Samoa Joe. And like I said, they did a fairly good job of building up to Bound for Glory. Really, the only thing I would say I could have dealt without on this show was the Magnus and RVD match. The women's match I thought was at least watchable. And the main event was a little lackluster, but there was at least a reason why it was lackluster. I'll get into that during my review. Let me get into it. The first matchup was Jeff Hardy versus Samoa Joe. This was the first semifinals match in the Bound for Glory series. This was obviously Jeff Hardy and Samoa Joe, like I said. And this was a really good way to start the pay-per-view. Crowd was really into it. Good back-and-forth action. Samoa Joe, they were playing off, his injured arm in this match. So Jeff Hardy was going after that in this match. Just really good stuff, putting everything out there. And then Jeff Hardy ends up picking the win in this match. Jeff Hardy had his version of the Anaconda Vice locked into Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe got out of that. Then Jeff Hardy basically wins with like a roll-up backslide. Jeff Hardy wins that match, but really good way to start the pay-per-view. About 2 and 3/4 stars, maybe even 3 stars. Really good match and enjoyable way to start the pay-per-view. Then the next matchup was Bully Ray versus James Storm. Now this was not as good as the opener, but they did at least something good in this match that is going to be building up to something for Bound for Glory. This is the second Bound for Glory series match. To whoever won this goes on later to take on Jeff Hardy in the main event, because Jeff Hardy went and won his match. This match with Bully Ray and James Storm wasn't too bad. It wasn't great, but they did something at the end I liked a lot. After they pretty much did everything with each other, there was 2 ref bumps in this match. James Storm accidentally knocked down both referees. Then towards the end, it looked like James Storm was going to pick up the win. Bully Ray was knocked down. James Storm was trying to revive the referee so he can get the pinfall. Then out of nowhere, Bobby Roode comes out there with a beer bottle, hits James Storm. James Storm's knocked out, and then Bully Ray picks up the win in that cheap fashion right there after the referee gets revived. So it's a good way to, for Bully Ray to win that match. And then you were going to be seeing James Storm versus Bobby Roode at Bound for Glory, which was a match I think everyone knew we would be seeing at Bound for Glory, but I don't think anyone expected it just to be a singles match. Obviously, everyone 3-4 months ago was predicting that with Bobby Roode still being the champion at that time, that Bobby Roode and James Storm was going to be taking on each other at Bound for Glory for the title. Now we'll just get a singles match, but nonetheless, at least we're going to be seeing at Bound for Glory. They should have a hell of a match against each other. I expect them to have something great. As far as the Bully Ray and James Storm match, I give it probably 2.5 stars, 2 and 3/4 stars. Wasn't bad, but definitely wasn't as good as the opener in my opinion. Then the next matchup was the women's match. This was Tara versus Ms Tessmacher for the TNA Knockouts title. This is actually, not too bad of a Knockouts match for TNA. Tara and Ms Tessmacher actually performed fairly good in this match. Kind of enjoyed it, got into it. It wasn't anything spectacular by no means, but it was above average. It was a better women's match than what I normally see from TNA or even WWE for the most part. And WWE is really scaling back on the way they're using their women, so you don't see them that much. But TNA, this was at least, above average women's match. Wasn't anything terrible. Ms Tessmacher picks up the win after winning with a roll through at the end, basically, upsetting Tara in this match once again. For a women's match, not too bad, 2 1/4 stars. Then after this, they did the whole Austin Aries. Aries calling out the leader of the Aces and Eights. He came out there. Obviously, everyone knows who who the leader is and who's under the mask. Luke Gallows, that's who that person is. That's probably the only member of Aces and Eights we definitely know who it is. You can even tell it's Luke Gallows, even if you aren't too familiar with him or remember him that much in WWE. But definitely it's Luke Gallows under there. So this was just a brawl between Austin Aries and Luke Gallows. It was a no rules match, so it really wasn't much of anything. And then at the end, then about a few minutes into the brawl, after a little while, Aries tried to remove the mask, to reveal who the leader was. While he was trying to do that, the other members of Aces and Eights stopped him from pulling it off, pulled the leader of Aces and Eights out of the ring, then came into the ring. They all beat down Austin Aries. Then the whole TNA roster came out there, trying to make the save. Then you saw a big brawl between them. And then they did a spot within this whole brawl that they did something to, build up something later on the night, which was outside the ring. You saw one of the members of Aces and Eights pick up Jeff Hardy and slam him shoulder first into the turnbuckle post outside the ring. So they were playing, is Jeff Hardy going to be able to wrestle later on the evening, and play it off that he got his shoulder injured. So then they built that up later in the show. So that was something cliffhanger for towards the end of the show. As far as Aries and the leader of Aces and Eights, since it was just a brawl and it wasn't really a match, that's one of those matches I probably would just give an NA, no rating available for that match. That's what I would probably give that. Then the next matchup was the X Division title match. This was Sonjay Dutt versus Zema Ion, which Sonjay Dutt looked great in this match. Sonjay Dutt's one of those guys. Now, I don't know if he should have been given the X Division title, because obviously it's smart to keep the title like they did on Zema Ion. Keep the title on him until Jesse Sorensen comes back, so you can have more heat for Zema Ion. And when Jesse Sorensen comes back, that'll be a big angle they do when he comes back. But Sonjay Dutt looked great in this match. Great stuff when he was involved in there. And Zema Ion didn't look too bad. It was actually a fairly good X Division title match. Zema Ion picks up the victory in this match, retains the X Division title, but a really good match. Definitely a whole lot better X Division title match than I thought it was going to be. I would give it easily 3 stars. Then the next matchup, probably the one match I could have dealt without. This was Magnus versus RVD. Really wasn't much of a match at all. Couldn't get into this match at all. Thankfully, RVD at least did pick up the win in here, hitting the 5-star frog splash onto Magnus to pick up the win. At best, 1 3/4 stars, 2 stars. It was the weakest match of the night in my opinion. Then the next matchup was the TNA Tag Team Titles matches. This was AJ Styles and Kurt Angle teaming up to take on the champions, which were Christopher Daniels and Kazarian. These two teams, whenever they're paired up against each other, can have great matches. You saw some great stuff in here with everyone. Angle did some great stuff. Even though Angle currently is injured, I don't know how bad he's injured, but he didn't. He played off, his injury a little bit, where you could tell he was a little hurt, but he didn't look like he was hurt that bad. AJ did some great stuff in here, and then Daniels and Kazarian as well. You saw excellent stuff in here. And then the end of the match, you saw, AJ was trying to go for the Styles Clash onto Kazarian, and Daniels was on the apron. Angle's already knocked out to the floor, and then Daniels threw a drink into AJ's face. Then Kazarian picks up the win in that way right there. So the champions of Christopher Daniels and Kazarian to retain the titles, even with the ending right there. Still great match. 3.5 stars, maybe. Yeah, definitely 3.5 stars. Best match of the night. Match I would definitely recommend people see. It wasn't as good as their match they had like a month or two ago on paper. I can't remember. I think it was at Destination X. They had a match against each other. It was really, really good, which was better than this, but this was still a really good match with them. And the heelish fashion of them retaining the titles, makes perfect sense. I don't have no problem with the ending of the match, since they are the heels. They're supposed to win that type of way. Then the next matchup was the main event. This was the finals of the Bound for Glory series match. This was Bully Ray versus Jeff Hardy, or will it be Jeff Hardy? That was the cliffhanger earlier in the show, since they did the thing with Aces and Eights, looking like they injured Jeff Hardy. He's taken out of the main event. So Hogan comes out there, saying, because Jeff Hardy's music hits, he doesn't come out there. Then Hogan comes out there. Hogan says, we don't know if he can compete. Then Bully Ray basically says, I'm not going to have this. Play his music. I'll win by the 10 count if he does not come out here. And then he said, I know Jeff Hardy wouldn't want it like this and stuff. That's the promo. They went back and forth with each other for a few minutes. And then after, this whole teasing, is Jeff Hardy going to be involved in this match? His music hits. He slowly walks out there, gets in the ring, and then obviously the main event is Bully Ray versus Jeff Hardy. We knew obviously they were going to do that. They weren't going to do, a swerve where someone else was going to take on Bully Ray. Jeff Hardy took on Bully Ray. Considering, the whole angle, they played off, he hurt his shoulder and he was really banged up. So obviously you weren't going to get a great match with against Bully Ray and Jeff Hardy, considering they were having to play through that storyline. But it was at least a watchable match as far as the main event, and I think the outcome was at least good. Jeff Hardy did pick up the victory. He hit the Swanton Bomb, looking like it was going either way, because it looked like Bully Ray was about to pick up the win at the end of the match. Then Jeff Hardy ended up, winning it. They were fighting at the top, battling back and forth, hitting each other with a number of punches. Then Jeff Hardy got a fury of punches against Bully Ray. Bully Ray falls down, and then Jeff Hardy goes up, hits the Swanton Bomb on Bully Ray. So we'll be seeing Jeff Hardy versus Austin Aries at Bound for Glory next month, which should be a great match. And even though, like I said, Bully Ray and Austin Aries had a great match, 2 months ago, that wouldn't have been a good match to main event your biggest show of the year, even if they could have a great match against each other, because that would not really draw too much, in my opinion. I think most people would agree with that match wouldn't draw. When you have Austin Aries and Jeff Hardy against each other, that match is going to draw, and it should be a great match. So definitely can't wait to see what they do there. And they did do a fairly good job of building up to Bound for Glory. So we know we're seeing Jeff Hardy versus Austin Aries at Bound for Glory, and Bobby Roode versus James Storm as well. And obviously something with Aces and Eights. I don't know what they'll be doing with them. Possibly some members of the TNA roster and some 6-man tag or 8-man tag or Survivor Series type of match. I don't know what they'll do right there, so we'll just have to wait and see. But as far as the show, it wasn't too bad a show from TNA. I don't know. The main event I would probably give 2.25 stars. It was at least watchable, and considering they're playing off the angle, you knew you weren't going to get a great main event, so that was the reason. At least there was a reason why a main event was lackluster. At least that was the reason behind it. As far as the show, I give it probably a 6.75, 7 out of 10. Like I said, it was an average show from TNA. Wouldn't be a show I would say rush to go out your way to see, but if you do check out anything on the show, I would definitely say check out the opener with Jeff Hardy and Samoa Joe. And the thing you definitely need to see, even though they had a better match before, they still had a really good match, the tag team title match with AJ Styles and Kurt Angle taking on Daniels and Kazarian. That's the other thing I would definitely check out if you do want to check anything on this pay-per-view. So, like I said, it wasn't a bad pay-per-view, but it wasn't spectacular. So, yeah, that's it for my TNA No Surrender 2012 pay-per-view review. All right, peace.